Ed Husic. Thanks very much for your company. I just want to cut straight to the chase, if I can, Mr. Husic. You are a Muslim MP, and Donald Trump, it doesn't define you, I know that, but Donald Trump has said that he will ban all Muslim migration. What do you think of that?
Oh, well, I won't be going to see too many more NBA games in the States, will I?
I guess that's
look,
true.
I guess, in all seriousness, there's going to be this period where he said certain things during the course of the campaign, and he'll be tested as to how he actually achieves some of the things that he said after the election. And in that case, in terms of Muslim migration, he'll be tested about, well, how will that apply? And how will that line up with what he said in his acceptance speech, 2 a.m. their time, where he said it's time to bring Republicans, Democrats and independents and everyone else together for the sake of the union. So there'll be that test, and then there's going to be another test about, well, OK, you made all these, you said you're going to do all these things. Did you achieve? And he'll be tested on that on the way through, and obviously in 4 years' time when he seeks, no doubt, re-election.
But Ed Husic, how do we judge him on all of this? Because on the one hand, when politicians break their promises, the media, the voters tend to come down on them like a ton of bricks. But if Donald Trump doesn't break his promises, we're going to have a wall between the US and Mexico, we're going to have a ban on Muslim migration, we're going to have a 45% tariff in the United States on Chinese goods. He's all but going to pull out of NATO, he's going to give nuclear armaments to his allies, and he's going to flee the Asia-Pacific region. How do we judge him? Do we congratulate him on breaking all his promises, or do we congratulate him on implementing a deplorable set of ideas?
Well, you're good at asking the tricky questions, and that's one of the trickiest, because you're asking to apply rules to a person who's broken every conventional political rule through the primary and presidential election process. And it will be interesting to see whether or not he can continue to defy political gravity in saying one thing that most other people say is off limits, out of bounds, and whether or not he can, basically maintain that type of approach. We'll have to wait and see. But I think the truism, I guess there are a few truisms, having read a lot in terms of and watched US politics for a while. Every president seems to be elected to be different to the last one. Every president seems to be elected because, and the particularly good ones, I mean, Barack Obama won in 2008 because he was seen as an outsider, that he would give the system a shake-up. The right has now had its own Obama moment in Trump, making history for not having been in an elected office or a serving personnel and won the position of president, and he's come in as a complete outsider. He is the Barack Obama of the right, insofar as, though I'm sure many people will be horrified with that analysis, but he is exactly the type of outsider, pitched himself as what Barack Obama was, but in very radically different circumstances.
What do you say to Muslim Americans who are about to potentially witness him putting a ban on Muslim migration? What do you say to women in America who have seen the way that he has described women? And what do you say to Hispanics legally in America who may be about to see a Gestapo-like force barge into their homes and deport without discussion relatives of theirs who in many cases have been there with them for years, in some cases decades, but are still nonetheless illegal migrants?
Well, what made America great is that it opened its doors. It says we will open our doors to the tired and the weak, and turned itself into an immigrant nation that became one of the most powerful in the world and championed democracy and the type of liberties that we all enjoy, particularly in various parts of the world. It has done so and set itself as a beacon for that type of behaviour. And the test's going to be what President-elect Trump does to either build that legacy or take away from it.
Should Australia open its doors to any American citizens who want to move here?
I think Yeah, we've already got, you're asking me to make a decision about immigration issues that we already have difficulty trying to sort out ourselves here in this country. So I think I'll leave that question aside for the moment, but come back to the point that you said about the different groups of people of different faith, colour, ethnicity. You know, for them, they will be watching very carefully to see whether or not the promise of America about being able to achieve what you want over there and given the ability to do so, whether or not that promise will be maintained.
The government are lining up one by one to criticise your leader, Bill Shorten, for his strong statements about Donald Trump. We heard in that media conference that the Prime Minister had that Josh Frydenberg was asked about comments that he made describing Donald Trump as a dropkick. If memory serves me correctly, I think he did that in an interview with Christina Keneally and I. He walked away from that like that. Are you a bit disappointed that the political class are walking away from conviction thoughts about Donald Trump just because he's been elected president?
Well, first thing is, I don't think you can say that's the case, certainly with someone like Bill Shorten, who said, for instance, last night, when it became clear that Donald Trump would be president, you know, Bill said, you know, I'm not going to walk away if I think that, or from statements that I think are wrong and demeaning, and the treatment of people are demeaning, I'm going to call it out. So I don't think that can apply to Bill Shorten. But I certainly think there is a test, regardless of this, you know, the game playing around, you know, you said this then and you said this now. I think there's a bigger challenge for political parties in this country. And people will say, oh, it's America, it's a different electoral system, different issue. But here in the Australian context, there's this challenge. You know, we've had 25 years of economic growth, continued economic growth, and yet we've got people that are feeling very insecure. They don't, you know, many people this year look at jobs growth, a lot of it's been part-time. People look at wages, stagnant. People can see some winners and some losers. And political parties have been conditioned on policy responses that the test now is how will we respond to what is a growing unease, where people feel like they can see investors have won, they can see management have won, but if you're a regular employee, for instance, you know, you're hanging out for a wage increase or hanging out for more secure employment, you can have governments trump or talk about you know, trade agreements and the like and saying how that's a great thing, but people don't see the benefit translating to them. And so I think the test is for political parties, how do we respond? Because we've had Brexit, we've had the rise of one nation, and we've had Brexit plus plus as described by Donald Trump. And so the test now in the Australian context is how do we respond?
All right, Ed Husic, I know that you've got to dash off to a busy day in Parliament. We appreciate you joining us on Newsday. Thank